and welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, Patreon exclusive content. I am your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and once again, it's great to have you guys here now. It's now just past noon on the East Coast, and I just got wrapped up with the live portion of the show. So now we are in the Patreon portion of that for the next half hour. And the show went well. Talked about a lot of stuff. Started off the show, of course, with the latest news and headlines around the league. Talked about the Orioles getting the win last night, clinching the AL East, and picking up their 100th win on the season, and also now having home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Talked about the Mariners' big win, walk-off win yesterday against the Rangers to keep themselves in the thick of it for the wild card in the American League as well. J.P. Crawford hitting a 2-run double to walk it off in the bottom of the ninth. And the Mariners ended up winning the game 3-2. So we got into that. Blue Jays picking up a win against the Yankees. So they're still in that second wild card spot, of course. And then on the National League side of things, we talked about the Cubs getting swept by the Braves. Marlins game against the Mets getting suspended after the Marlins took the lead in the top of the ninth, going up 2-1. So it's right now they're in Pittsburgh. Mets game got postponed with the Phillies today, so they got a doubleheader. So I didn't know how they were going to do it. But I guess if the Marlins and the Cubs are like tied by the end of the weekend, if that's possible, then they will resume the suspended game, the Marlins and the Mets, on Monday and finish up the ninth inning. And then the next day is when the wild card round starts. So, yeah. And Skip Schumacher of the Marlins, the manager, he was not happy with how it all went. I mean, the weather was terrible last night. I mean, I was in the city last night. It was awful. And it was awful. It's awful today. It was pouring earlier today. So, yeah, the weather hasn't been good lately. And actually, let me just check to see. Let's do a little weather report here. And one of my good buddies from college, and I think I mentioned him on one of these. Yeah, he used to be big on weather. So, yeah, today and tomorrow, at least like where I am, it's going to be bad. But then, you know, the weekend's going to be, Sunday's going to be great. Monday through Wednesday is going to be great. So that's at least good. But yeah, I mean, and I talked about it on the live show, but if it comes down to that, like it comes down to the Marlins and the Mets having to finish up one inning, I mean, you just feel bad for the Marlins because if it comes down to that, and let's say they like blow that game and they get knocked out of the playoffs because of that, I mean that's gonna be terrible. But they do have, you know, a 3-game set with Pittsburgh, so they should do well there, and they should get themselves in because the Cubs right now just are reeling, and I mean it's very deflating when you could have won the first 2 games against the best team in baseball, and your bullpen ends up blowing both of those games. Well, more specifically the second one. The first one was more on just, well, bullpen and also a misplay in the outfield. But I did see, you know, a lot of people coming to the defense of Seiya Suzuki and saying, hey, listen, he's one of the main reasons why we're even in this position. And he's having a very good year if you go look at his stats. So, I mean, obviously he's definitely, you know, definitely very upset with what happened, but yeah, I mean, obviously you can't be like, oh, he's the reason that we're not going to make it. Like, and obviously there's going to be people that overreact and say that, but you know, there's a lot of reasons for why the Cubs can miss the playoffs. I mean, they went on this stretch where they just were not doing good. They just weren't. I mean, they had the second wild card spot. And then all of a sudden, they just weren't playing well. So you got to go look at that. Look at the stretch that they've had in this month. Hasn't been good. That's the main reason why. Because if you were to have played better over that stretch, then I mean obviously the games with the Braves would still be important, but they wouldn't hold as much weight as they did at this particular moment in time. And listen, you play better, you could have been fighting the Brewers for the division. And now it's meaningless games for the Brewers because now they clinched the division. So it definitely is tough right now to be a Cubs fan, and it looks like they are at the moment. Right now they're on the outside looking in. Again, anything is possible, but I think when it's all said and done, you're going to see that the Marlins are going to be the team that's in the playoffs, and that's going to be the team that is going to end up playing the Brewers for in the first round in the wild card round. So yeah, so the matchups are, I mean, at least like the home teams are set at the moment. So you got, obviously the number 2 wild card is going to play the Rays, right? That's how they work. Yeah, and then you got the number 3 wild card is going to play the Twins. Number 2 wild card is going to play the Phillies, and then the number 3 is going to play the Brewers. So yeah, so the matchups, it's probably going to end up being Blue Jays Rays, who are playing this weekend. Then you are going to have the Diamondbacks and the Phillies, which is an interesting matchup there. Then you're going to have, well, this is not set in stone, but you're going to have the Astros and the Twins, possibly, which I would take the Astros. But listen, that's just my opinion. It could definitely go the other way just because I'm saying it. And then you'd have Marlins Brewers, who just played each other. So then you look at that, and who would I favor? I mean, I'd probably take the Rays over the Blue Jays. Phillies and Diamondbacks. Phillies got a good lineup. They got Zach Wheeler. I probably would take the Phillies just because they're at home and their home field advantage is like insane. But, obviously, I think that could definitely be a series that goes 3 games. The Twins, and if the Astros make it, I mean, I think the Astros sweep them. If they make it, of course. And then you would have the Marlins and the Brewers. I would favor the Brewers in that. So I think probably I would say like the Rays Blue Jays series and the Phillies Diamondbacks. I would say those series probably have the potential to go the full 3 games. I think the Brewers with Woodruff and Corbin Burns at the top, I think that's that definitely is gonna hurt the Marlins' chances of moving on. But also the Brewers got a hit. They struggle their offense does struggle in the postseason. And the Twins, against the Astros, it's just a bad. I feel like whoever the Twins end up playing, it's just a bad matchup. But listen, anything can happen. Anything can happen. But again, it might just be. I mean, the other thing is too with me, it might just be Yankee bias, just because the Yankees beat up on the Twins in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, like the Astros, I think have knocked them out too. Yeah, like the Twins, like when they make the play, they don't go far. They get knocked down in the first round, and I think that's going to happen here too. But I could be wrong, of course, but I'm just looking at the track record. And again, Astros might not even make the playoffs. So, there's a lot can happen this weekend. And like I said on the show, we might still have a game that's going to be played on Monday because the Mets and the Marlins might have to resume that game. And are there going to be fans in attendance? Or is it just going to be? I mean, I think at that point, like, first of all, why would anyone want to go to that? Yeah, let me go to the 9th inning of this game and be gone and go for an hour and then come back. I mean, people probably would do that, but I don't know. But again, it might not even be played. Marlins might, sweep the Pirates. Cubs, lose the series against the Brewers, and then that's it. And then from all this, you got the Padres and the Reds. Like the Reds are a game and a half back, so that's more realistic, of course. But the Padres apparently are still mathematically alive. I guess because I mean, do they hold? I guess they hold the tiebreaker over the Marlins. So like, if the Pirates sweep the Marlins and the Padres sweep the White Sox, which is possible, and the Marlins then end up losing the suspended game, then I guess do the Padres have the tiebreaker over the Marlins? But it's just, I mean, but everything's got to go right for the Padres. It's just not happening. I just love talking about it just because, like, again, I'm here for the chaos. But listen, I mean, Padres 7-23 in 1-run games, 1-12 in extra inning games. That's the reason why they're not making it. So, you know, that's why it's like so. You know, I don't know, but we'll see how. But that's why it's so important. You got to win these games. You got to win games early in the year. And I keep saying you flip flop some of those extra inning and 1-run losses, and we're having a different conversation right now. But yeah, it's just one of those years. The Padres just, and their run differential is very good. They got a good team. It's just they just had a very weird year, and yeah, like watching the Michael Kay show yesterday, him talking about like the three teams that should be red hot about not making the playoffs are the Yankees, the Mets, and the Padres, who will be part of that like big disappointment list that I do. I don't know if I'm gonna do. I mean, I might do like a segment like just talking about the big disappointments, but then like, I guess maybe during like the off season. Like, you go through, like, the teams and just talk about, like, specifically, like, what went wrong. But I'll figure it out. But let me know what you guys think about that. But yeah, like, those teams are the top 3 teams in payroll. So, like, of course they got to be red hot that they missed the playoffs. I mean, they all had high expectations. I mean, they all dealt with different things. Obviously, like, the Padres... I mean, even though the Yankees have, like, a better record than the Padres, like, I still think, like, the Padres are, like, better than the Yankees, Even though the record might not reflect that. I mean, the Mets, like, there's so many people. I mean, all these 3 teams, of course, people had them going to the World Series. I mean, the Padres and the Mets, I would say more specifically, just because the Mets had the highest payroll in Major League Baseball history. And, you got Justin Verlander at the top of the rotation with Max Scherzer. But again, not the guys from 10 years ago, guys that are 40 or almost going to be 40. And, yeah, it just didn't really work out. And they had injuries to the rotation. Edwin Diaz got hurt. So, I mean, there's a lot you could point to. Obviously, we don't know what the future of Buck Showalter is going to be, if he's going to be out. So the Padres, I think they run it back at least one more year. Supposedly they are trying to extend Juan Soto, and they should because Juan Soto is a great player. But I mean, you run it back next year and you don't do anything, then I think it's like, all right, we're gonna blow this up. You're gonna have to, I think, because I feel like this year just like it was like a fluke year for them. I feel like next year they could turn it around. But there's also talk about how like the clubhouse wasn't like gelling. I saw stuff with that, so I don't really know. I don't really know what the what the whole deal is with that. But again, like we'll get into it in the off season as well as things come out. The Yankees, I mean, obviously I talked about it for a little bit, so they're getting like a independent company to do an audit on the team. Look at their analytics and all that to see. And, talking about how Hal Steinbrenner was not happy with how the season went. He's tired of being runner-up. Listen, I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to, major changes happening with the Yankees. Because right now, I mean, Cashman's going to be back. Boone, I think, is going to be back. I would be a little surprised if they actually let him go. But if they do, they're going to just bring somebody in with the same kind of philosophy, I feel. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to come out of these major changes. Out of this investigation. I mean, they need better. They need better players. Right now they have so many holes. They don't really have a third baseman. They don't have a center fielder. They don't have a left fielder. They don't really have a catcher. Like, there's so many holes on this team. And they got some holes in the bullpen, which or not in the bullpen. Well, they kind of need a closer. They need like an actual closer because Clay Holmes is not. I mean, yeah, he's been good, but he's had a lot of hiccups, and like we need like someone that's actually a closer, and Clay Holmes be that setup guy. And yeah, you got. I meant to say you got some holes in the rotation, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, they might just be like the other thing that you got to worry about is they do the investigation and they say, well, if you didn't lose Judge, you didn't lose Rizzo, your team would be good. That's what they talked about on the Michael Kay show, and that's something that Yankee fans got to worry about. Is that ends up happening? Like that's not. I mean, that's not good because they've had the best record in baseball since like August 28th, whatever it was, but you can't just go off of that. You got to look at the bigger picture. They weren't a good team in the second half of last year. They weren't good. I mean, they were 11 games over when Judge got hurt, but then he came back and they lost 9 in a row. So there's a lot of issues, and they go to the playoffs and they don't hit. So there's a lot of issues with the Yankees that they need to address, and you can't be banking on the postseason. Anything can happen, and we're good. Look at regular season record. Like their measuring stick is different from a lot of other people, including myself. I think you need to look at how you do, and this goes for anybody. You can't just look at one season. You can't just look at. You got to look at you got to look at the bigger picture of things. You can't just be like, well, we went from the wild card to the ALCS. You went from the wild card to the ALCS, but you got swept in the ALCS by a team that you've played numerous times in the playoffs, and you put up more of a fight in those series than you did in this one. So you need to measure it from that standpoint. Like, you went from Game 7 to Game 6 to getting swept. And again, this goes for anybody. This goes for anybody. Like, you have to look at how your past history with a certain team that you continue to see year after year after year in the playoffs when it really counts. That's how you should be evaluating your team. You shouldn't be evaluating it off of, well, we went from here to here. No, you got to look at who you played against. Now, obviously, yeah, it does factor in, like, hey, we went from the wild card to the ALCS, and I understand that, but it's also how you got there too. Like, they barely squeaked by the Guardians. They could have easily lost that series if it wasn't for Garrett Cole, and then you got swept. So that's really how anybody should evaluate, their season. How did we do against the really good teams? And instead, they just look at, well, we played better at this point in the season, and I think that's the kind of team we are. Well, I don't know. I just feel like that's where there's like a disconnect between the organization and like the fan base, because there's two different viewpoints on how a season goes. So, but yeah, I mean, there's teams that had disappointing seasons. Obviously, there's teams that you didn't expect. I mean, you didn't expect the Orioles to have 100 wins and win the division, have the best record in baseball. That definitely was not on a lot of people's bingo card this year, and it's awesome for them. It really is. I'm happy for them. Like, again, there's really no animosity towards the Orioles. There's not. They had a lot of, and especially because you look at them, they've had a lot of rough years, leading up to this point since the last time they made the postseason. Let them have their moment. This is their moment to shine. So and listen, I mean, you're gonna have to pay these young players at some point. So I guess, and who knows if they are going to do that. I mean, I feel like they have to. If these guys continue, if these guys really develop into superstars, I mean, you got Gunnar Henderson, who's a Rookie of the Year candidate. You got Adley Rushman. I mean, you got there's good players on this team. Santander is a good player. Um, and you got studs in the bullpen with Cano and Batista, obviously the closer. So yeah, I mean, listen, the we'll see how they respond in the playoffs. I mean, Camden Yards is going to be a madhouse when they have Game 1 of the division series next week. So yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, I mean, that's nobody really expected that, but the Orioles are here. The Orioles are back, so we'll see how they perform in the postseason. And also another thing I touched upon is listening to my radio stations here in New York and listening to the not really like suspicion but just questioning the Atlanta Braves and the kind of season they're having. And I think for me again listen, they could believe whatever they want if they do, or they can have suspicion. Because I feel like, again, like I talked about on the show, you're always going to have, I feel like in this day and age, you're always going to have suspicion when a player performs really well. Because it's just, because the game was kind of tainted at one point with steroids, and of course most recently when you got the Astros and the sign stealing. There's always going to be suspicion there, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's just how the game is. So I don't think they're doing anything, but it's just now, like I said, like your brain is like programmed to think like, oh, what if he is doing something? Because I remember, like, you go back to 2012, Derek Jeter was having a really good year. After, like, 2011, he only batted, like, 270. It was either that or 2010, whatever it was. But 2012, he was having, like, an MVP-type season. And you had people in the media who were like, I don't know. What if he's doing something? What if he should get tested? It's just... that's how it is, though. It's just there's always going to be, like, suspicion. Guys are doing things that you haven't seen, really. I mean, you look at, again, Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs last year. There's definitely people, suspicious of that. It just stinks that, like, we're at a point where it's like you can't just sit back and enjoy it. Now, obviously, like, if you don't like the Braves, you're going to have suspicion. And you're going to be like, well, I hope it is true, because you don't want them to do good. But I mean, just as like a baseball fan in general, like just sit back and enjoy. Like, they're a very good team. They got two guys on their team that are having historic seasons. Matt Olson breaking the Braves' all-time like RBIs in a single season record. You got what Acuna's doing, being the first player ever to hit 40-plus home runs and steal 70 bases. It's never been done before. So why can't we just sit back and enjoy what these guys are doing instead of, it's possible they could be doing something. I don't know. But again, that's just the day and age that we live in. So, but, it's always going to be there. I mean, that's just never going to go away. But that's just because of the past. It's because of, guys taking steroids, the sign stealing. It's always going to be there now. So, but for me, I think just you got to try to block that out and just enjoy, what this team is doing and what they can accomplish this year. Because they got home field as well. They're the best team in baseball. And they should be the team that wins it all. They should. But I'm always going to say, listen, anything can happen with baseball. You just never know. If a team gets hot at the right time, they could get knocked off. It happened last year. So, but, yeah, so that was other stuff that we talked about on the show. But, Yeah, I mean, listen, you look at like the Blue Jays. I mean, I think the Blue Jays are gonna get that second wild card spot. It's gonna be tough this weekend with the Rays, but they should get it. It really just like the possibility of the Astros missing the playoffs. Because I don't think the Blue Jays are gonna. The Blue Jays I think are fine, but if the Astros end up missing the playoffs, man, that's again another thing I wouldn't expect on my bingo card. And another thing when I was listening to the radio was you know, Yankee fan on the radio talking about like they would be really mad if the Astros missed the playoffs because then it's like the Yankees missed it the year the Astros missed it, and that's the team that you can't beat. But you know what? At the end of the day, that's your own fault. So I don't think I would be shocked if the Astros end up missing the playoffs. I'd be shocked. The Blue Jays, I mean, I've talked about how they, they come up small in big moments. Yesterday, listen, Chris Bassett pitched very well. They beat Luke Weaver. Now let's see what you do this weekend against the Rays. Now, you played well against the Rays the previous week, so let's see what you do this time. And, if the Mariners continue to play well, Blue Jays slip up, Blue Jays could be the team. That's how close it is. Like, it's just so close with all these teams. So, yeah, we will just have to, wait and see. Big weekend coming up. Monday is going to be a great show, previewing the series, the wild card series, and yeah. I mean, it's and then recapping what happened over the weekend, and yeah, I will give my I'll do my my playoff bracket, or I'll do like some kind of thing where, I'll make predictions. For that show on Monday, so we'll do that. And then then we're like I keep saying, we're gonna be off and running with the postseason. And we'll see what kind of craziness this postseason brings us this year. I mean, the month of October is just gonna fly by. It just is. And then we're gonna get to that point where it's like, all right, so now what? What do we talk about with no baseball going on? So, but that's when you guys come in and we have conversations. You guys comment things, in the chat, and I'll answer them. It could be like a Q&A or something like that. So, and then whatever chats I don't get to, that'll be what this is going to be for. Because that's kind of what we've talked about here with, if, with what this Patreon exclusive content will be is just me, talking about the live chats that I didn't get to. And answering those. Because right now, really, what I've been doing is just recapping the show and just going over what we talked about. But yeah, that's pretty much it with at least today's show. But yeah, that's what things are starting to look up with us. We're getting a lot more views on things, so it's encouraging. So make sure to continue to watch and subscribe, leave comments. That's always much appreciated with that. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it with today's show. Again, I wish everybody a good weekend. Enjoy the games. I have a busy weekend myself. So I got a crazy weekend. Going to be going to another Taylor Swift concert at MetLife Stadium. Just kidding. Well, it's the Chiefs and the Jets with Taylor Swift there. So that'll be fun. And yeah, so again, hope everybody has a good weekend. Enjoy it. Enjoy the games. We'll see what happens on Monday when we come back. So until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder once again signing off from the GSMC Baseball Podcast, Patreon exclusive content episode brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. And once again, I will see you guys on Monday. Take care.